fear and guilt are not empowering, right? I'm not going to make my best decisions if I'm reacting out of guilt. And if my goal is to raise kids who can balance this in their own lives, then getting into that messiness and that trial and error and that figuring stuff out is, I think, going to be really helpful to them as they grow up into young adults.
Today, we are diving into a topic I know so many parents wrestle with: screens. From video games to phones to tablets, technology is woven into our kids' lives, and figuring out how to handle it without constant guilt or power struggles can feel overwhelming. Joining me today is Ash Brandin, a classroom educator, speaker, and author of Power On: Managing Screen Time to Benefit the Whole Family. You may also know them as the Gamer Educator on Instagram, where they share incredibly practical and non-judgmental guidance for families navigating technology. In this conversation, Ash and I explore a more realistic and respectful approach to screen time, one that goes beyond just set limits and instead focuses on teaching kids how to build lifelong skills, regulate their emotions, and develop a healthy relationship with technology. We'll talk about how to use screens with intention, how to involve kids in the process so they feel respected and empowered, and why gaming is actually a powerful form of play that can strengthen connection and resilience. So if you've ever found yourself worrying about how much is too much, or wondering how to move from rules and restriction to balance and collaboration, this episode is for you. Hi, I'm Dr. Sarah Bren, a clinical psychologist and mom of two. In this podcast, I've taken all of my clinical experience, current research on brain science and child psychology, and the insights I've gained on my own parenting journey, and distilled everything down into easy to understand and actionable parenting insights, so you can tune out the noise and tune into your own authentic parenting voice with confidence and calm. This is Securely Attached. Back to school and sports season is here, and that's why Name Bubbles, a mom-founded brand, is going to be a game changer for busy parents. Their durable, waterproof name labels for kids' stuff, lunchboxes, water bottles, backpacks, clothing, more, are all dishwasher and laundry safe, which means once you stick them on, they stay put. They are perfect for daycare, schools, sports, and camp, keeping your kids' belongings from going missing or ending up in the lost and found. Name Bubbles are award-winning and trusted by parents nationwide. To check them out for yourself, visit namebubbles.com and use code NB15 for 15% off your first order. One of the best parts of being a parent is getting to share the things that we loved as kids with our own children. And what better way to do that than through Disney songs? That's where Disney Baby Playlist comes in. It's the perfect soundtrack for your little one's day, whether it's tummy time, playtime, car rides, or those sweet everyday bonding moments. You'll find yourself humming along and transported back to your own childhood with these cheerful sing-alongs, gentle instrumental renditions, and timeless Disney classics. One of the things I love most about music is how it can instantly shift the energy in a room. So whether you need something playful to get your baby moving or a calming tune to help everyone wind down, this playlist has something for every moment. These songs don't just entertain. They create opportunities for connection, for play, and for building treasured memories together. And as parents, it's such a joy to hear those familiar tunes again while watching our little ones light up as they discover them for the very first time. Because every magical moment with your baby deserves the perfect soundtrack. So wherever you stream music, search for Disney Baby Playlist and press play. Hello. Welcome back to the show, everyone. We are really lucky. We have Ash Brandin here today. Thank you so much for coming on. I would love to start with your story. Like, what led you to study and teach about screen time in this like super unique and non-judgmental way that you do?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm so happy to be here and talking with you. My background is I'm a classroom educator and I'm a career educator. This is still my day job. And I grew up as a kid who just enjoyed things like video games, and they were part of my life, but they were just another part of my life. And I didn't really think about that as being unique. And then I grew up into an adult who still liked to play video games, and they were still just one part of my life. And so I would often kind of reference them or pull from them, or talk to kids about them the same way I would talk to a kid about their soccer practice, and began to realize that that was sometimes a bit more unique from my colleagues. And I really was interested in how games are so motivating. I think we often think that they are quote unquote addicting, but often what they really are is motivating. And I thought, like, how do I bring in those elements into my classroom structure and my teaching? So not making it like gamified, like, oh, you did your assignment, here's a star, but how do I make it feel as compelling as games? And so I did that for a while and tried some stuff and really liked how it kind of transformed some of my teaching. And I kind of presented that in game friendly spaces, mostly like conventions and video game spaces. And then once the pandemic happened, I had been kind of waiting for some sort of push to put me online to make me pull the trigger. And then when I realized I wouldn't be going to any in-person events anytime soon, I was like, well, I guess it's time. And my initial community buy-in was from a lot of homeschool communities, which had a very different definition in 2021. Many people were homeschool communities in 2021. But that was when I realized, like, oh, I'm not talking to just an educator audience. I'm actually talking to a much bigger audience. I'm talking to caregivers in general. And that was when I realized that I could kind of bring in the techniques of education that I looked at every day in terms of like management and behavioral management and scaffolding and executive function, and kind of tie that in with my knowledge of games and technology. And that kind of just organically led to where we are today. Here we are.
Here we are. And where are we? Because I know where we are.
Right.
But I know you have an incredible platform called The Gamer Educator. And if parents aren't familiar with that, like, first of all, you should go follow Ash on Instagram. Your content's really great. But
thank you.
You explain this stuff in a way that is like, oh yeah, that it very much clicks for me. And it's stretched my perspective because I too have come, I mean, I have been, and I'm sure we'll get into this today, but like I came probably starting out into this conversation about like phones and games. And before I had when my son was a baby, I was like, no games, no screens, no video games. And now like the reality of having an 8-year-old boy, almost 8-year-old boy, and a 6-year-old girl, she's not as into video games, but she's into lots of other things related to screens, was like, because I didn't understand video games. I didn't play them when I was a kid. And then hearing the way you talk about it as having so much utility, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes actually a lot. It's like, it was a foreign world to me that I didn't have a lot of insight into.
Totally. Yeah. I think a lot of my page is sort of reframing things for folks in ways that will help them think about it in a way that feels more, I don't know, relatable, or just kind of puts it into context in a way they haven't really thought about before. I think we silo a lot of parts of parenting and think of them as being like very separate or very different from each other. But honestly, so many parts of parenting really are the same in terms of thinking about how we might handle something. And it's really just applying it to different media or parts of kids' lives. And I think if we're not really familiar with something, we think that we're kind of unmoored and don't know what to do. But most of the time, we actually really do. We have a set of skills to fall back on that can be really, really useful. And sometimes it's just putting all that into the context and helping folks realize like, oh, actually, I do know how to handle this, and kind of giving them permission to kind of handle it in a way that would already maybe feel comfortable with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you talk a lot about like, okay, if you have kids, a lot of parents struggle with this. I mean, I get asked this question. I know you get asked this question a lot of like, okay, how do I set limits around screen time use? And what's the stuff I should allow? And what's the stuff that I shouldn't allow? And what age is okay to start? And I think your answer to most of these questions, I think, is like, that's the wrong question to be asking. Or like, let's flip that on its head a little bit and look at it from a different angle. Like, is there a paradigm shift that we can think about? And I like the way you talk about it. So I'm just wondering if like when people ask you those questions, how do you reframe it for them? Or what's a way to think of it from a different angle?
I'm trying to think of how to do that really generally. Yeah. I mean, on the one hand, I know that if I were like the person desperately seeking an answer, because I have been that parent, we're all that parent or caregiver at different parts of our parenting journey. But when I have been that parent, like the last thing I want is for someone to give me like a non-answer answer. And I'm like, how dare you? I wanted a number, right? Like, just give me a concrete number. And we also often learn through parenting that like there is very, very rarely a actual right answer. And so often it's being comfortable with and kind of giving ourselves permission to experiment, to try things, to see how things are going to go. So when people are like, what's the right amount? Right. And instead of saying like, oh, it's X number of minutes, my common reframe is something like the right amount is an amount that is beneficial to everybody in your family. And some people will hear that and go like, well, but my kid would want to play for 3 hours. And I'm like, right. But is that beneficial to you? Because probably it's not, right? Like, of course they want to play for the 3 hours. That's not my question. Like that's my question is what would benefit all of you? Because if you're like clock watching and obsessed with a number of minutes and you're like, oh, because my pediatrician said it should be an hour, or whatever, right? You're hearing don't exceed X number of minutes. If that's what you are myopically focused on, then I think it deprives us of agency and being able to problem solve other things. Because if we're not exceeding the number of minutes, but like our kid is having a hard time, then we're like, but it's not the wrong number of minutes. Why are they struggling? Right. And now we've kind of lost the thread. And the other side of that is if I'm going to go over the number of minutes I'm aiming for, but it means that like we're going to eat a meal I wouldn't be able to make otherwise, or I'm going to be able to like have all of my mental load done so that I can be present and regulated and a better caregiver, then that is probably better for my whole family, including my children, than if I am like sacrificing of myself to try and minimize because I've decided that the only metric I should care about is time or shot length or content or delivery, insert any of those varying things here. And it's a lot harder to have those conversations, right? It's much easier to kind of do that more simple binary, do this and not that. And a big part of why I do the work I do is to help people feel empowered. Fear and guilt are not empowering, right? I'm not going to make my best decisions if I'm reacting out of guilt. And if my goal is to raise kids who can balance this in their own lives, then getting into that messiness and that trial and error and that figuring stuff out is, I think, going to be really helpful to them as they grow up into young adults.
Yeah. That's beautifully said. I feel like there's this very, like you said, super understandable need for some sort of core guidelines, and also a very strong, realistic also need for this flexibility and like personalization of it fitting in your family. Include like when you were saying like, does it benefit all people in the family? And it was like, the example was like, but the kid might want to play for 3 hours. I was like, I want my kid to play for 3 hours so that I can get all my stuff done. And my kid's fine with that. But is it beneficial to him to play for 3 hours? It might actually be beneficial for me, but we have to make sure it's beneficial for everybody. And so it's like this balance of like, sometimes, I think there's two different extremes we can go on. It's like, and I find myself in both ends of these spectrums of like, on the one hand, it's like, I want to really limit screen time And if they go over that, I have anxiety about what's that going to do to my child's well-being. And
Mhm.
what is it displacing from like a skill development or a brain functioning standpoint? And like they get more dysregulated and they're, whatever. But on the other end of the spectrum, it's like I really have to check myself sometimes and say, I've checked out on how much screen time's been happening because I'm in the weeds in my own
Right.
stuff. And I'm
Yeah.
like using it as an auxiliary parent, which I definitely do because I'm a human and I just have too much. And so sometimes it's me actually saying like, I've dialed it too far out and I have to come back in. And like, that means I have to be more intentional and I have to do more work sometimes in the parenting sphere. And that's hard. Like it's hard on both ends.
Absolutely. Yeah. So something that I kind of dig into in the book that I wrote that came out recently is kind of setting up these frameworks and the things to kind of consider. And the thing I recommend starting with is considering what your need is. Like, what is the need that might be necessitating a use of a screen? And sometimes the need might just be like leisure, right? It doesn't have to be through the lens of productivity, but it often is because of things that you're talking about. So, if my need is like, we're in a busy season and I have like less capacity than I typically do. And my need is like, you know what, right now we're going to be on screens more. And I'm just sort of resigning myself to that, but I still want to, maybe not just open Pandora's box entirely. Then if my need is, I need more time, like I'm going to need more time and therefore they're going to be on a screen more. Well, that might also help me decide what kind of screen that I say yes to. Another part of the book, I talk about what I call the ABCs of screen time, which are kind of the big components to consider, but they're also often the pain points and the underlying causes of a lot of the pain points that people have with screens. And they stand for access, behavior, and content. Access being like time on a screen, how they get a screen, how they get access to it. And if I know like, okay, my need right now is I need an hour. I need an hour and a half. I need a pretty big chunk of time. But I also want it to be time where maybe I'm not having to intervene a lot, or I know my child will not get too dysregulated or be successful. Then that kind of tells me what the content might be, right? Because if I know that a certain app or a certain show or a certain movie is really activating for my kid, or they have a really hard time with certain kinds of content and they need a lot of intervention, or we can only play that game if we've, run around and done some big regulatory like movement first. Well,
or
then
it's like super hard to turn it off for them.
Right. Then I'm not going to have that be the content. Right. And that's a lot easier to do when we're able to think of it with neutrality, because then I'm able to think of it as data and as information, and how am I going to do this to meet all of our needs? Because exactly as you said, like, sure, I might need 3 hours sometimes, and my kid would probably not technically have a problem with that. And if it is then making it so that they're dysregulated or other members of the family aren't getting their needs met, or it makes the whole rest of our day really difficult, then actually that isn't really benefiting us, right? We're paying for it on the other end. So that is also not an indictment of us, right? If that happens, it doesn't need to be like, oh, I failed, right? It's because I'm a bad parent. That's not going to help us. So instead thinking of, what can I control? Like, maybe I can't control that I need an hour, but maybe I can control what we do before or after. Maybe I can control what I say yes to. Maybe I control other parts of our day to feel like we're kind of getting a more well-rounded experience, if that's really important to me. So it's just thinking about, again, coming back to what's the need for all of us, and then how do I kind of work around that, factoring that in.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. And it kind of bumps me to this other thought I have, which is that I want to ask you about, which is like, okay, we as parents have this responsibility of setting the boundaries around screens, but our kids, it's in their lives, whether they're really little and they're just observing us using them, or they're older and they're starting to engage with screens, whether it's TV or tablets or games. Or when they get older, they're getting phones and smartwatches and group chats and social media. Like it goes fast. It like it's I had this episode that I did with one of my mentors. His name's Ale Duarte, and I'll link it because it was a really good episode on screen use. But he uses this metaphor of a river with different currents. And so there's like the warm waters, there's the adventure stream, right? Where it feels really good and we get lost in time, but we like lose track of time, but like there's no gravity. like I could be an NBA basketball star and like, but it's not like throwing basketball, shooting hoops in my backyard because I miss sometimes. And then there's like the stressful waters, and then there's like the dangerous vortex of current. So it's like he talks a lot about teaching kids how to notice where they are in the water. Like the river is tech and the banks are real life. And like, where are you in the water? Like, how do you know when you're moving into an adventure stream? How do you know when you're ready to get out? How do you know when you're moving from the adventure stream to like stressful waters? How do you know if something dangerous feels like it's happening? Like, so helping, and I feel like you do a lot of talking around like helping kids become educated consumers of this tech, educated about their own, how it feels to use it. And I think there's a lot of alignment in the way he talks about it and the way you talk about it. I'm just curious what you think about that metaphor, but also just like how do we support kids to become players in this?
Yeah, I love that it was a water metaphor because my go-to metaphor lately is also a water metaphor. So perfect. Yeah. We're really well aligned. Is the metaphor I've been going to a lot lately is to talk about pools. So because a lot of times if I were to say to families like, hey, yes, sometimes kids have a hard time stopping, or they don't want to go do something else, or they have feelings about a boundary, right? And sometimes I'll reframe by saying, okay, but how would we feel if they were having a hard time leaving the playground or leaving the pool or getting out of the bathtub? We probably wouldn't blame the playground or the pool or the bathtub. And sometimes the response I get is like, okay, but those things aren't designed the same way as screens. Well, for one, if we talk about food, yes, they are, right? Like if we talk about certain kinds of food, like more like engineered snack foods, they are absolutely designed to make you want to eat more of them. That is truly how they are designed. And we also know that if we ban those things entirely, that we are making them feel really special and probably doing the opposite of what we want. So actually we can talk about those things and not ban them completely, but also not allow them completely. But we also, because certain things have inherent danger, we do prepare our kids accordingly. And so when I think about something like a pool, pools or bodies of water are inherently dangerous to humans because we don't know how to swim. We don't know how to keep ourselves safe in water from birth. And that doesn't mean that we wait until our kid is 14 and then go, oh, okay, you're in the 8th grade. Apparently now you're fine to swim. Go, right? Instead, we actually intentionally expose them to the thing that is potentially dangerous in a way that is age and developmentally appropriate, while we also build the skill for them to navigate that thing while we keep them safe from the parts they're not ready for. Right. So I put my baby in the pool with water wings on, and I'm holding them most of the time and, letting go on occasion. Right. They're getting exposure. I'm still keeping them safe. And then we scaffold this endlessly, and even when one day, like my kid is a pretty independent swimmer and I'm still going to keep an eye on them. Right. I'm still going to make sure that we're somewhere with a lifeguard. And if we're in the ocean and my kid were an Olympic level swimmer, they're still going to need to care about and be wary of riptide and currents and undertow. Those are always going to be dangerous. A lifeguard
at the beach,
right? Right. Those some of those inherent dangers are never going to go away, and so we prepare our kids by giving them education and by giving them a set of skills so that they can kind of assess that risk and know like when it's something they can handle, when it's something that they can't. And I think that the more we can think about how those skills cross over, again, I think is really, really helpful. So if a kid is struggling with stopping at the end of playing a game, okay, well, is that a skill that they also struggle with in other parts of their lives? Because if they also struggle when it's time to wrap up and they're in the middle of a book, or they're doing a big project at school and they struggle to wrap up, or they struggle to end anything else, well, then that sounds like the skill is the thing that is actually need to be addressed. And we can address that across all of these different areas of their lives. And the more that we are able to see that skill transfer, the more that then we can help them see that skill transfer, so that the message they're getting is not, oh yeah, like I can't play that game because I'm bad at stopping playing that game. But instead, like, I am working on the skill of wrapping up or stopping in the middle of something. That's hard no matter what. And I think that again helps us be more neutral, because if I'm like, oh yeah, it's hard to stop, then yeah, I mean, it's hard to stop. That's pretty easy to empathize with. But if I go to a place of blaming the screen or blaming the tech or blaming the video game, that's not going to really create connection with me and my kid, right? It's going to kind of put a division between us. And also, like, that's not going to help us tomorrow, right? Like, especially if we're using it out of necessity. It's like, well, tomorrow I'm still going to need help. So what am I going to do differently tomorrow? I'm just going to feel bad. So I think there's a lot of that skill transfer and the neutrality really go together. And I think what I love about the analogy you mentioned with the river also is that kids are involved in that. They're not being done to. Right. We're bringing them along and we're seeing them as worthy of including in that, so that they're getting that agency from the very beginning.
And that self-awareness, because you talk about like skill building, right? Like, this is the skills we build in our kids when we help them navigate tech are not exclusive to tech, as your point was just illustrated, right? And so these are lifelong skills that can be used inside of tech use and outside of tech use. And like being aware of our sensory experience, being aware of our emotional experience, being aware of our kind of how much, like, are the backs of my eyes hurting? Do I need to stretch my body? Am I feeling kind of stressed out, like, because someone's saying some mean stuff online and I don't really like the way this feels? Like, one of the risks of tech is that it has a really unfortunate byproduct of kind of pulling us out of our body, because it's such an immersive experience. And so being able to learn the skill of staying turned on while you are engaged in tech, it's a challenge, but it's doable, right? Like, and sometimes you have to flicker on and off, right? Like, if you're in the middle of a game, if you're in a flow state inside of some fun game, you're in that adventure stream, right? You aren't going to notice, oh man, I'm really hungry and it's probably time for dinner and maybe I should stop and like take a break, or, ooh, I got to stretch out a little bit, like, or whatever, fill in the blanks. We kind of like leave our bodies and move into this world, right? But if we can help our kids learn that skill of like taking a pause and checking in and being sort of toggling between virtual life and real life and being interested in the internal experience, like, that's a really useful skill in lots of places way outside of tech.
Absolutely. Yeah. And frankly, I mean, especially if you're in more of that sort of really focused flow state, also not exclusive to technology. Right? Like, how many times am I, kind of hunched over doing something that is not actually on a screen, and then realizing like, oh, I'm tight or need to move, or, oh my gosh, I haven't like had a break in an hour and a half and I'm suddenly feeling like really out of it. Right. So yeah. And being able to then find those parallels, I think, like you're saying, can even make it helpful, so that if that's then coming up when they are on a screen, it's not like, oh, well, you're like this because you're on a screen, right? And instead it's like, hey, you're really in the zone, and it can be really hard to break away when you're really in the zone. And just like when you are building Lego and you're super into it, and then you realize you haven't moved in a while, it's the same. It can be the same thing. So like, let's build in breaks. One of the things I mention in the middle of my book in the Screen Time ABCs is a word that I really love for things like this, which is notice, because the word notice is very neutral, and it doesn't ascribe any sort of like morality to what's happening. Because I think a big part of what you're talking about is if we want our kids to notice those things, that's a skill in and of itself, especially if it's something they're really interested in. And so often we might have to help them notice those things, which means we might have to be explicitly telling them those things. And that can be really hard to do without it feeling kind of weighted or moral, especially if it's things that maybe don't feel super helpful. Right. Like if we are sensing sort of dysregulation, we don't want to be like, you're getting dysregulated, right? You're getting dysregulated. How can we give the
feedback without it feeling like criticism?
Right. Exactly. So hard. And notice, I feel like, can be really helpful because it puts, at least for myself, it puts me in a position of having to speak really objectively. Right. Instead of like, you're being rude. Right. Like, I don't like your tone. It's like, I notice. Now I have to really describe what I'm noticing, like what I'm seeing or observing. And then helping them take that information and do something about it. Like, oh, I notice that you're squirming around a lot. Okay. That's what we notice. It's not good, bad, or anything else. You're squirming around. Okay. And then maybe it's, do you need a break? Maybe it's, do you want to sit on a wobble chair? Maybe it's, do you want to balance on one leg? Right. And then did that help? Did it not? Did it make any difference? In my household, when we have done that noticing for my kiddo, what was really interesting is that when we addressed that and they had a way of processing some of that movement, particularly during screen time, they got much better at the screen time. Like they were better in the video game they were playing. And so that actually made it more positive because then if we did notice it, we could say like, oh, remember when you give your body a way to move when you're trying to focus, actually you were more successful in the game. And that's great feedback and also keeps it more positive. And again,
and inside their range of like interest, right? Like, cause you were saying at the very beginning, like gaming is actually really motivating. And you had said something, and I'm trying to think. I had a thought. It was like, okay, gaming. You were kind of talking about the difference between like gaming versus gamification of things, and using gamification as like a carrot and stick kind of thing versus like a behavioral manipulation tactic versus gaming as in play. And I'm like, for me, immediately like, oh, a light bulb went off of like thinking about it in terms of like, well, gaming. I talk all the time about how play is a connector. It's a relational experience. Parenting, like using playfulness in our parenting strategies can like open up a whole world of like building skills and setting boundaries and holding limits inside of play. It's like, it's just a vehicle by which to do so much. And like gaming is a different type of play. It's why not think of it from that lens of like, how do we build skills through something playful and fun? We do this we accept this as a reality in so many places, but perhaps it's harder for some of us to say it still is true for games, even if they're on a screen. Like, it's very true for games.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, because I do find it very like paradoxical that the conversation at large is often kind of critical of games and screens as if they are a waste of time. And then there's a lot of push to then do that sort of quote unquote gamification in parts of their lives. But the gamification in big air quotes there that often ends up happening is what you say. It becomes like sticker charts and carrot and stick. And those are the moments where I'm like, I need you all to please go play a video game because that's not how they work, right? Like if you were to give a player a version of a Mario game or I mean, even like, I mean, any game, if you give them a version of a game where in order to do the level, you had to like go through these kind of arbitrary like roadblocks and then the game was like, hooray, you did it. And like over rewarding you and, flickering things on the screen, you would feel so infantilized by that and very quickly be like, I'm not doing this. Like, this isn't
Mhm.
fun. Right. And then somehow we turn around and then we do a lot of that in sort of the name of gamification in a lot of educational spaces. And it ends up kind of undercutting us because, like you said, the thing that a lot of people enjoy about video games is the immersive play and the motivation that comes from that, because it gives us a sense of autonomy and control. It gives us a sense of competence and self-assuredness. In many cases, it also gives us a sense of relatedness because we're able to somehow relate to other people. And especially for kids, especially for school age kids, they go the majority of their day and therefore their lives having very little autonomy, right? Like all day they are being told where to go and what to do and how to sit and when you can leave and when you can go to the bathroom. And they don't get a lot of autonomy.
No.
And so then they can come home and they can easily tap into a digital world in which no one is saying that they're doing things right or wrong. Maybe they do technically do something wrong, but the game isn't going to admonish them. It's just going to not let them do something a certain way and give them a chance to try again.
Walking into the wall and you keep bouncing back and like it just doesn't let you go.
Right, right. And it's going to enforce the boundary, but with neutrality, right? It's not going to be like, why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? How many times do I have to tell you, right? Because we wouldn't play a game that did that.
Sure.
Right?
It just doesn't let you do it. And then
exactly.
So you gotta figure out a different way.
Exactly. And it's going to let you figure it out. And it's going to let you do that on your own terms while keeping its boundaries in place. And that is something that a lot of kids really don't have in other parts of their lives and want to get somewhere else. And I think that's why sometimes we see kids want to turn to these digital spaces because, yes, that is an easier way to get that feeling than diving deep into imaginative play or doing, strategic thinking like in a sports team, right? It is a lot more accessible and immediately satisfying to do it through a video game. But that doesn't mean it's bad. We don't want that to be the only way they do that thing. Because if it is the only way they do that thing, as I'm sure you know better than I do, then anytime they want to feel whatever the thing is that they're missing, they're going to turn to the video game. So if they think
it's got lower, it's no gravity zone, right? It's like that.
Well,
in that, just like, for example, like if I play like FIFA soccer versus I go and play soccer in my backyard with some friends, there's a lot more gravity in real life soccer. I'm going to miss the ball more. And it's not to say that like you don't get frustrated and have to learn distress tolerance and frustration tolerance and problem solving skills when you're playing the video games. It's just, to your point, if I exclusively did that, if I only ever played FIFA soccer on my whatever, I don't know if like that's what it's called, but if I only played it on my video game and I never really did any outside play, I'm not going to, when I go and do that, like at recess, I just might not have the grit. Like I might not have, I might want to give up a little faster. I might say, this is boring. I just want to go back to the video game because it's easier. And it's like, we need to build distress tolerance. We need to build frustration tolerance. We need to build problem solving. You can do that in video games. That's definitely a part of it. And it's doing it in a sort of like sub-gravity zone. Like it's just it's got a different weight to it. But I'm really curious what it was.
Well, depend. Yes, I agree. Yes, absolutely. That often video games or those kinds of activities can become sort of the lowest hanging fruit, right? Because I know that's how I'm going to get that psychological need met. Right. If I am coming off a whole day of being told what to do and where to go and how to act, and I'm like, oh my God, I just want to be in control and have people leave me alone. Right. And I can do that in a way that is very dense in its need satisfaction, then I am going to turn to the video game. And that does not mean that the experience of doing that is necessarily going to be like always puppies and rainbows and super fun and easy.
Right.
But like you said, we don't want a kid turning to that every single time. Sometimes we do need the lowest hanging fruit. I talked about this with Alyssa Blass Campbell, who I know you had
I love her so much.
the show, where I used an example from my own life where I said, like if I'm in a really bad place with like an anxious, churning brain, I can't put on like a comfort show because my brain is like, cool, we can keep spiraling. We'll just keep spiraling while the calm show is on in the background. That's fine. We'll just keep spiraling. If I am really struggling, the thing that I need to do is I watch Jackass movies. This is my like, if things are pretty bad, we're watching Jackass. And I only need to do it for like 30 minutes maybe. Mm-hmm. Maybe more if I feel like it, but I don't need it for very long. And I have to engage with it enough, and it gets me out of my spiral. And then I'm able to transfer and go over to an actual coping strategy.
Right.
But if you
probably honed that skill over a lot of practice and self-reflection, and you're an adult. How do we, but like kids can do that, but we have to help teach them how.
Yes. And I think a huge part of it, frankly, is modeling. Like we do so much modeling when our kids are babies, right? We script all the time because we know that's how they learn language. And then they learn language and we kind of are like, all right, we're done, And so much of emotional regulation, but also like executive function, and especially with things like regulating our relationship to technology, so much of it is invisible to kids, right? If they often will see us looking at our phones, perhaps more than we would like them to. Guilty. But I think a big part of that is too also just naming what I'm doing, because so much domestic and invisible labor has moved onto phones. Mm-hmm. And I think that we become very demonizing of parents being on their phones in a way where it's like they can't win. Like if they're looking at their phone at the park, people are like, they should be watching their kid. And it's like, if I were watching every move my kid did at the park, people would tell me I was being a helicopter parent. And also like 30 years ago, my mom would have been reading the newspaper and nobody would have been yelling at her about that, right? She would have been making the grocery list and cutting coupons. Well, that's what I'm doing. I'm just doing it on a phone, right? So sometimes it's just naming like, hey, I am literally, you just said that you grabbed the last granola bar from the pantry. I am putting it on the grocery list and then I will come back to doing whatever we were doing. Just like sometimes naming those things, but with the emotional intelligence piece and the introspection piece, naming like how you're feeling and what you're trying and what you notice. Like I've done that before where I've had a day where I was like, I'm just in a funk. I'm sad. And I kind of want to distract myself and see if that does anything, because who knows? And I played some Zelda for a while. And then after like 25 minutes, I paused and said, I'm having fun, but I can already feel my mood creeping back in. So I can tell that this is only going to distract me as long as I'm doing it. It's not actually helping me regulate. So I'm going to pause and I'm going to quit for today because it was a nice distraction, but it's not actually helping me. And so I think instead I'm going to try going for a walk. Let's go for a walk. Right. And
I love that.
No good, bad, or anything. Just like naming.
Just making it loud.
Right. Just saying it out loud. Seriously goes such a long way, because then we're also giving our kids that sort of implicit permission that they can experiment with this. And we might then feel more comfortable asking them of like, did it help? Did it not help?
Yeah.
What else can we try? Because sometimes we do need the lowest hanging fruit. Like my Jackass example is like, if you came up to me in the moment where I'm in my peak anxiety spiral and you were like, how about you do a box breath and think about the worst possible outcome? I would be like, get out of my face.
Yeah.
Right? I'd be flipping a table and being like, get out.
Yeah.
Because I'm not capable of engaging with that.
Right. You don't have the bandwidth. We have to have matching bandwidth for what we're asking ourselves to do or our kids to do.
Right. And, if I'm on a day where I've had a really rough night and I've had 3 hours of sleep, right, I might know like, okay, the long-term strategy to this is I need to go to bed early tonight. But that is not going to mean that I'm not going to pick up an extra latte, right? Like I'm going to probably still need the low hanging fruit of the short term solution in order to be able to access the longer term thing that might be more sustainable.
Yeah.
And we all have those moments in our parenting where you look at your kid and you're like, oh my gosh, I've misjudged something. And I thought we were going to be fine and we are not going to be fine. Right.
Yeah.
And we're in public and we're risking a meltdown or a hanger or whatever. And I had one of those instances with my kiddo and I literally handed them my phone with an app I knew would be like regulating, like would help bring them down because we had like a 45-minute train ride and I was like, this is not going to go well.
Yeah.
Right. And handed that to them and they pretty much listened to music and like had a very calm experience on the way back. And we made it back and everybody benefited from that. Right. Like my kid did. I did. Everybody else on the train did. But if instead I'd been like, well, I don't want strangers to see my kid on my phone because they'll judge me. It's like, well, for one thing, the opposite situation, if I hadn't given my kid a phone, they would have been judging me, believe me, because it would have been a rough day.
Okay, I don't want to put you on the spot too much, but are there particular apps that you prefer to share with your kid or that you recommend parents try out that you like better, that you find more friendly?
We were talking about how like video games are often digital play opportunities. And so the apps I really love, particularly for young kids, are open-ended play opportunities. Sometimes we assume that for an app to be beneficial, it needs to be like quote unquote academic or educational. But what we forget is that the audience that gets marketed to for educational games and apps is not kids, it's adults because they're the ones doing the purchasing. So they design them to have activities that look educational to an adult. And those are not necessarily the kinds of like actual hands-on, more integrated learning experiences that we really want kids to have, which are often play-based, right? Especially in young childhood. So one that I recommend all the time that I love is called Pock Pock. It's spelled
I love Pock Pock. That was one that I was going to say because like I think
that's the
so
one
good.
I handed my kid on the train. Like, and they like opened up the radio and just like listened to the radio forever. But I mean, so I'm not joking. There are times where I will open up Pock Pock and play the Marble Run where I'm like,
my kids ask for Pock Pock all the time. Probably because it's one of the only apps I will let them play on my phone.
Yeah. But it is, I'm so glad that you love it as well. It truly is so lovely. And it's so funny to hear adults kind of try to interact with it because they'll be like, well, but it doesn't say what to do. And I'm like, yes, that's the point. Like it doesn't tell you what to do. But believe me, they will figure it out. They'll play.
I'm like, they get it better than I do. I still am like, I don't understand exactly what to do. But they figure it out and it's really cool.
It's a bunch of digital, in case people are unfamiliar, it's a bunch of little digital sort of toys. I like to call it like Montessori work in your pocket. It's a bunch of very hands-on, as much as you can be in a digital environment, kind of tactile. It's like, digital blocks or a digital marble run and a digital busy board. And you're just sort of, toggling switches, or you can make little custom avatars. They have a space module that's very adorable. My kiddo loves taking people to space and going around. And in the town, there's a little town. I am in it, which this is one of my things I am most proud of probably in my life. They made a little version of me and I live in the bookstore. So,
oh my gosh, wait. Okay. Because like a Pock Pock is, in full disclosure, like I have an affiliate link with them. Like,
me too.
I'll share it. drsarahbrand.com/Pock Pock. I never talk about it though, because I'm always like, how do I fit this into my content? I just kind of like, I enjoy it. I tell people about it in like one-to-one, but they gave me a little avatar to it. I don't know if it's in there. They gave me a little postcard with like my avatar, and I was like,
"Yes, I have that. Yes,
that makes me so happy." Yes. I gotta look for me in there. I don't know.
Yes, you should look. Yes, because when I first found out that I was in it, after I got done crying, then I was, then I told followers, I was like, if your kiddo finds me, then like tell me what adventure I go on. And that's lovely. People are like, oh, my kid took you to get a pizza. Like they took you on
I
a
don't know
boat.
if I'm
like,
in it. I just know I got a postcard, but you
but
might be a level up for me.
Perhaps it's a goal. One of the things that I love most about that, though, I don't know about your kid, is that my kiddo is so descriptive and like they talk constantly when they play that game, much more so than others.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll be narrating like what they're doing or where they're going or what they're thinking about. And I mean, talk about like seeing the learning going on. It makes it really easy for us to talk about what's going on. Anyway, that is a real long tangent about Pock.
But I know. But it's one thing I'll just add because I think it's important because my son is about to turn 8 and he does play video games. Like he plays like
same
real video games.
Yep.
And he likes Pock too.
Yes.
So like it's not like, oh, my kid's not gonna like that because they've already kind of like tasted the real thing. Like no. It's fun. It's just a different vibe. It is a different thing, but it is still great. And every time I mention or recommend it, I say like it is great for all ages. And then I will still get people who are like, okay, but really, like what age is it good for? Like I have a kid who's 7, 8, 10. And I'm like, no, it really is great for all ages. I'm really not exaggerating. Yeah. Like it is. Everybody can enjoy it than like Candy Crush. I also have a rule for myself because I have like ADHD. And we didn't even get into this. You have to come back and we got to talk about like addictions and like screen stuff.
And neurodivergence and screens.
Yes. We should do it. If you are down, I would love to do that.
Please.
But
would love it.
Okay. Done. I'm booking it in my head.
Hooray.
Amazing. But I have a hard time turning off things. And so like I have this personal rule because I had like, I don't know, I used to like just lose time in games that like I just don't allow any games on my phone for myself. Like I can't. It's just like for me, it's a no-go because it's already hard enough for me to turn off things like social media or my email. Like I probably like compulsively check my email like 400 times a day. And I don't need to add any more phone gluey things that I can get stuck in. But I feel like I would much rather play Pock than Candy Crush or whatever. Some of those like sort of mindless, like very hypnotic games that like just get you stuck.
Yeah. And for all the games that are open-ended and difficult to stop, because Pock is very open-ended because it doesn't tell you what to do, right? There's not really a sense of time there. It is shockingly easy to stop, I find, at least in my experience with my family. Like it's pretty easy. And certain things like save and persist. So then we can say like, oh, okay, we'll be back, we'll come back to the town and pretty much everything stays the same. So Pock is it. Pock is a fantastic one.
Yeah. I didn't intend for this to turn into a commercial for Pock, but it basically just did. So
I don't think they'll complain.
Sorry, not sorry. Sorry, not sorry.
But yeah, that especially for young kids, that one is a real winner.
Yeah, totally. And this is just a perfect example of the fact that it's not this all or nothing.
Yeah.
I'm one of the people in the world who says like try not to use screens for regulation purposes. And also that's not a blanket rule, right? Like it's in the optimal moments when you have the bandwidth to co-regulate and your child has the bandwidth to be co-regulated and we can try to like create a learning like a corrective emotional experience here. Sure, do it.
Right.
That's the time to do it. And frankly, if you do that every once in a while, it will go very, very, very far in teaching like motion regulation skills. And if there are times where you don't have the bandwidth or your kid doesn't have the bandwidth or the environment is not conducive to the work that has to be done, you don't have to follow the quote rule each time. It's like, this is aggregate. Parenting happens in the aggregate. Yes. All of this stuff is in the aggregate. And so I think that just goes full circle back to what your original statement was at the beginning of the show, which was like, what is going to benefit everyone the most in this particular moment? Not forever and always. You're not carving into like a slate stone what the rules are. You're just you're just reacting to now.
Right. And then it's okay to react to now. Right. And if I'm making this judgment call right now, because this is what is going to be best in this moment, right? Because we're in a situation where I can't do the best practice that I would love to do in isolation in a vacuum.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's probably good for our kids to see us be flexible and adaptive and not just be demanding that of them, because I think we demand flexibility from kids a lot. And sometimes the flexibility that we're really asking for is compliance, right?
Yeah.
It's not really flexibility. It's more like, I would like you to do what I'm asking you to do without complaining. And being able to model that flexibility back to show like, yes, I have a goal I'm trying to meet, and I'm still going to be cognizant of you, child's role in our family, and like your needs as well, and factor that in. Especially as kids get older, being able to involve them in some of that decision. Like if we already know, like if we're already in the place where we're like, actually, yeah, probably I just need to say yes to this in this particular case because it's going to work out better for everyone. But instead of issuing it as a blanket decision, if we have a kid who we think can be involved in that, saying like, hey, so like, how are you right now? Like in my kid's case, it was like we had been out all day doing really fun stuff at a giant outdoor park area. So I knew they were like tired and hungry and hot, right? Like all these kind of sensory things going on, and being able to build in that introspection and go like, how are you? Are you, you seem spent. Are you tired? Are you hungry? Do you need a snack? And then like, okay, so what would you like to do right now on this train ride? Like, what are you feeling? And if they're suddenly like, well, actually, I'd really like to, watch a Bluey episode, then we can come in and be like, you know what? I think that sounds great. You take one of these AirPods. I'm going to take the other one. How about we watch two? You choose the first. I'll choose the second. And then after that, we will play I Spy, right?
Yeah.
But then we can build in the transfer out of it. And if we have the capacity, we can stop and talk about like how we feel before and after that, and what, if it made a difference. And if then we're able to do something different, like now we're going to play I Spy on this train, or we're going to read a book, or we're going to, do what have you. We can even talk about like, hey, do you think you could have done that before we watched the Bluey? Do you think watching the Bluey helped? Why do you think that is?
Oh, I love that. That's really building those reflective functioning muscles.
Right. Because then we're also talking about like, okay, well, what if we had instead watched something very different? Choose something that would be very different for your kid.
Right. Well, like Bluey's short and quick and fun.
Right.
And maybe if we got into like, I don't know, K-pop Demon Hunters, and I had to stop it halfway through because we weren't, then they would be like,
Right.
That is my life.
Yes, exactly. Like, well, and how would it have felt? Do you think that would have been easier or harder? Okay. So when we have a short amount of time, do you like to watch things that fit in that amount of time? Or do you like to watch the thing you're more interested in, even if you have to stop? Like all of it's so much transference to so many parts of their lives, so many important things.
Yeah, I love this collaborative problem solving that you're doing. I also recognize like that whole thing has to live inside of, we're talking about bandwidth, right? Like that's not going to be accessible if our kids are at that 8, 9, 10 on a scale of 1 to 10, but 5, 6, 7. Oh yes, there's room for this.
And if we do grab that lowest hanging fruit, and we watch some Bluey, or we watch some K-pop Demon Hunters, or they play a little bit of an app, and then 20, 30 minutes later, now they're at a 5. Now I can do a quick like, oh, wow.
Right. And all of this is unavailable if we go from this sort of very black and white abstinence model. Like we don't do this until this age. So it's like, there's so much richness that happens inside of the screen use when we're doing it intentionally, and we're helping share our experience as we navigate it, and then inviting our children in age-appropriate ways to participate as well, with lots of scaffolding, like with the floaties and the lifeguard and like, scaffolding, right? So that they eventually trust themselves.
Yes.
Because again, talking about transferable skills, if you have a child who trusts their experience and trusts their capacity to solve problems and keep themselves in alignment with what their values are, you've won the game.
You've nailed it. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I love talking with you about this.
This was wonderful.
Yeah.
So
if people
fun.
want to get your book, it's called Power On, or if they want to follow you on Instagram or just stay plugged into what you are doing, like where should we send them? What links? We'll put it all in the show notes.
Thank you. Yes. So on Instagram, I am the gamer educator, and I cross post everything from my Instagram to Substack. So if you want all of those things without being in Instagram, they can just be sent directly to your email. So I'm substack.com/thegamereducator, and my book, Power On: Managing Screen Time to Benefit the Whole Family, is out wherever you buy books. If you really enjoy or do not enjoy the sound of my voice, I am the narrator of my audiobook, so that might influence that purchasing decision if you really really like or dislike it. So yeah, audiobook read by me, and it's also available in like digital ebook and paperback wherever you buy books.
Oh my gosh. Well, get it. It's great. And thank you so much. I've just had the best time talking with you.
Yes, it was lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to today's conversation. I know that navigating screens and technology can feel overwhelming at times, but I really hope this episode gave you some fresh perspective and practical tools to make things feel a little more manageable. And if you want to download PocPoc, the app that you just heard Ash and me talking about, you can go to drsarahbrandin.com/PocPoc. It's that beautifully designed, open-ended digital play app that we both use with our own kids and truly love. PocPoc gives kids a chance to explore, create, and play in ways that are engaging and developmentally supportive. So once again, that's drsarahbrandin.com/PocPoc. And when you use that link, you'll also get 25% off plus a 7-day free trial so you can see how it works for your family. So I will see you back here on Thursday for our Q&A segment of the podcast. And until then, don't be a stranger.